everybody. Welcome to Module 4 of CAT 125R, Public Rhetoric and Practical Communication. This week we'll be talking about a very important topic, appealing to audiences, because that's certainly a critical component of an effective rhetorical expression. And it can be tricky, particularly when you're appealing to audiences online. And there might be a variety of factors involving interpersonal communication in the face-to-face context that you're lacking. A couple of reminders for the week. First of all, great participation on Piazza. Keep it up. You've been wonderful audience members for each other. Make sure you have access to a webcam and microphone for your weekly section meetings, because as audience members in section, you're not just passive spectators. We expect you to be active participants. We expect to be able to hear you and see you. And it's important, particularly as I start to come visit the sections and get to know you as individuals, that I can see who you are and hear what you have to say. So make sure that you're watching the required lectures every week, which are available as Zaption tours on Canvas, and let me know if you're having any technical difficulties. And I hope to see you in office hours, which are Tuesdays and Thursdays at noon. Thursday, I'm in my physical office in 249 Pepper Canyon Hall at the UC San Diego campus. And on Tuesdays, you can reach me online via the link to Google Hangouts that I've sent along a couple of times. So in this unit, we're going to be talking about 4 basic questions to help you engage with publics. The first question is, what is the message? So this can be a seemingly simple question, and yet sometimes an unclear message might require a lot of decoding. So we're going to talk about strategies for clarifying the message that you are putting forward. Second, who is behind the message? Now, there can be situations in which the message is perfectly clear, but what's murky is who's behind the message. And that can be not only a question of literally who's behind the message, in the case of a seemingly anonymous communication, or a communication in which a person might be hiding behind a particular kind of identity. Or it can be who is behind the message in the sense of, yes, we know who the author of the message is, but we don't know much about that person. We don't know that person's traits, and we don't know much about that person's authority and credibility. The third question is, who's the audience for the message? And this can be tricky since, of course, digital files can reach unintended audiences and be used for unanticipated purposes. So there are ways that you need to try to predict your audience and also be prepared for the possibility that a message might reach a secondary audience that might not be the initial audience intended. And finally, what is the message intended to accomplish? We'll be talking a bit about speech act theory, and we're going to be talking about the idea of having a particular purpose in your public rhetoric and practical communication. And the purpose that we'll be addressing, of course, will be getting into graduate or professional school or receiving a scholarship in the case of your personal statement assignment. So let's take a look at 2 sample openings for personal statements and see if we can see how they are answering those 4 questions. What's the message? Who's behind the message? Who's the audience for the message? And what's the message intended to accomplish? So here's the first example. My intrinsic passion for fairness and order, coupled with my analytical and objective leadership ability, serve as constant reminders that I've been brought up to succeed at a high level in the field of law. So let's take a look at the language of that first example closely. So it opens with the person's intrinsic passion. And that's going to be contrasted with an analytical and objective set of qualities that are introduced in the second line. Now, one thing I might caution you about is talking about passion, because passion has become a bit of a cliche in our society. So you might want to avoid the kind of hyperbolic statements that go along with claiming that you're passionate about something. But there are a lot of good language choices as well. We have fairness and order being set up as one important component of the message of this personal statement. The second important component is analytical and objective leadership ability. So I'm a little wary about talking about leadership ability because leadership, again, can become something of a cliche. But I like the way that this personal statement addresses qualities that are going to be important in the highly competitive career of the legal field. First of all, this person is establishing an interest in fairness and order, which of course is important in a rule-based system like the legal system. An analytical and objective personality, which if you've got to interpret a lot of information and data, particularly examining reams of case law, that's going to be an important personal quality. And finally, the fact that this is someone who is expected to succeed at a high level indicates a competitive personality that would be appropriate for the field of law. So our second example uses a different strategy. The first example, it opens with the qualities of the individual person and then applies it to the general situation of the chosen field. In this case, we're opening with the general situation of the chosen field and then moving to the person's personal qualities. So this one reads, most, if not all, of the pressing environmental issues we face are extremely dynamic. They are dependent on many different variables, and there's usually not just a single defined solution. Therefore, leaders who can bring a dynamic, interdisciplinary approach will have the greatest chance to solve them in the most efficient way possible. I want to pursue a master's in environmental science and management with a specialization in coastal marine resources management at the Bren School because I'm confident that I'm one of those leaders. So let's take a look at the language of this personal statement. What's interesting is there's a lot of energy in the language that's used in the opening. We know that these issues are pressing, we know they're dynamic, we know they have many different variables, and because of that complexity, there's no single defined solution when it comes to ecosystems and the many different factors that go into decision making about the environment, when there might be trade-offs that involve development, energy, economic issues, and so forth. I'm a little wary about the repetition of dynamic. We see dynamic appearing a second time. But I like the fact that this person is making a strong argument that you need an interdisciplinary approach for those complicated issues. And then that person moves into the I language involving pursuit of a master's in environmental science and management that has both the general qualities of the field and also a specific focus on coastal marine resource management at a particular institution. So when you think about it, you're going to need to address those 4 questions in your personal statement. The first question, what's the message? Right? This is the controlling idea or thesis statement of your personal statement. So for example, in our 2 examples that we just looked at, they were complex messages that had multiple parts, but there were strong controlling ideas that connected those parts together. So you want to be really clear about telegraphing a strong message, particularly in the opening, rather than just seeming to tell a series of disconnected anecdotes that don't put forward a strong thesis. Who's behind the message? So this is your opportunity to construct your ethos, and you're going to construct it through concrete details. So the language that you use, the stories that you tell, and the descriptors that you include are going to be important in establishing that ethos. And sometimes your ethos is going to be determined just by how you organize the personal statement. So for example, if you decide to organize your personal statement in chronological order and start with a story about being a very young child, that's the opening impression of you that your audience will receive. And that might not be the best impression to start with, even though telling a story in chronological order seems like a logical choice. So think about how your audience is going to be asking who is behind the message. Of course, you want to be mindful of who the audience is going to be for the message, and the best way to do that is research the individual programs or institutions to which you are applying. So it's really important to do your homework and have a good sense of audience as you're putting forward the message of your personal statement. And finally, you want to be mindful of what the message is intended to accomplish. And this can be tricky because, of course, you have an obvious goal of getting into the program. But you need to not just have one single goal that seems overly ham-fisted. You need to have achievable goals that might have to do with informing and persuading your audience via specific details. Or even better, you want to persuade by informing. And that's one of the important themes of the lectures this week, as you'll see, is that changing someone's mind about something that's really big, researchers find is difficult to do. And so often when you want to persuade an audience and actually do something with words, right, have an effective speech act, you need to be mindful of breaking the goal into achievable steps and parts. And so that's it for this week. I look forward to seeing you again next week in another intro lecture, and also seeing you in person in your sections. See you soon. Bye.